Okay, so this is the second part of Stormalong. I'm gonna pick up right where I left off. Okay, and like I said, you um, you could watch this as many times as you need to. You could break the reading up into 2 days or 3 days, however you feel most comfortable with. So we left off on page 145 when he's wrestling the octopus. And he became the most popular sailor on board. He became sort of a hero to all the other sailors. So I'm going to pick up on page 146, okay? And follow along. But Stormy still wasn't happy. Partly because no ship, not even the Lady of the Sea, was big enough for him. She would nearly tip over when he stood close to her rail. All her wood peeled off when he scrubbed her decks, and giant waves rolled over her sides when he sang a sea chanty, which is like a chant, like a sea song. Worst of all, Stormy was still lonely. The Clipper's hammocks were so small that all night he had to sleep by himself in a rowboat. As he listened to the other sailors singing and having a good time, he felt as if his best friend the sea had betrayed him. Maybe it was time for the giant sailor to move on. One day, when the Lady of the Sea dropped anchor in Boston, Stormy announced to his friends that he had decided to give up his seafaring life. "I'm going to put an oar over my shoulder and head west," he said. "I hear there's room enough for any kind of folks out there, even ones as big as me." "Where will you settle down, Stormy?" a sailor asked. "I'm going to walk till the first person asks me, 'Hey, mister, what's that funny thing you got over your shoulder there?' Then I'll know I'm far away from the sea, and I won't ever have to think about her again." Stormy walked through the cities of Providence and New York. He walked through the pine barrens of New Jersey and the woods of Pennsylvania. He crossed the Allegheny Mountains and floated on the flatboats down the Ohio River. Pioneers often invited Stormy to share their dinner, but these occasions only made him homesick, for folks always guessed he was a sailor and asked him questions about the sea. It wasn't until Stormy came to the plains of Kansas that a farmer said, "Hey, mister, what's that funny thing you got on your shoulder?" "You asked the right question, mate," said Stormy. "I'm going to settle down on this spot and dig me some potatoes." And that's just what Stormy did. Soon he became the best farmer around. He planted over 5 million potatoes and watered his whole crop with the sweat of his brow. But all the time Stormy was watering, hoeing, picking, and planting, he knew he still had not found a home. He was too big to go square dancing in the dance hall. He was too big to visit the other farmhouses, and too big for the meeting house, too big for the general store. And he felt a great yearning for the sea. Remember, yearning means a great desire for the sea. He missed the fishy-smelling breezes and salt spray. Never in the prairies did a giant wave knock him to his knees. Never did a hurricane whirl him across the earth. How could he ever test his true strength and courage? One day, several years after Stormy's disappearance, the sailors of Boston Harbor saw a giant coming down the wharf, waving his oar above his head. As he approached, they began to whoop with joy. Stormy was back. But as happy as they were to see him, they were horrified when they discovered how bad he looked. He was all stooped over. His face was withered like a withered cornstalk, and there were pale bags under his eyes. After word spread about Stormy's condition, thousands of sailors met to talk about the problem. "We've got to keep him with us this time," one said. "There's only one way to do it," said another. "Build a ship that's big enough." "Aye," the others agreed. "We can't have him trail behind us at night in his rowboat." So the New England sailors set about building the biggest clipper ship in the world. Her sails had to be cut and sewn into the Mojave Desert. In the Mojave Desert. And after she was built, there was a lumber shortage all over America because they used so many logs to build his ship for him. It took over 47 seamen to manage her pilot's wheel, unless, of course, the captain happened to be Alfred Bulltop Stormalong, who could whirl the ship's wheel with his baby finger. Stormalong named the clipper the Courser. On her maiden voyage, he clutched the Courser's wheel and steered her out of Boston's harbor. As he soared over the billowing waves, his cheeks glowed with sunburn, his hair sparkled with the ocean spray, and the salt water began coursing through his veins again. Soon Stormy and the Courser were taking cargoes all over the world, to India, China, and Europe. It took 4 weeks to get all hands on deck. Teams of white horses carried sailors from the stem to the stern. The ship's towering masts had to be hinged to let the sun and the moon go by. The tips of the masts were padded so they wouldn't punch holes in the sky. The trip to Crow's Nest took so long, the sailors who climbed to the top returned with gray beards. The vessel was so big that once she hit the island in the Caribbean Sea, she knocked it clear into the Gulf of Mexico. But one of the Courser's most memorable escapades took place in the English Channel, when she was trying to sail between the Calais and the dark cliffs of Dover. Her crew discovered the width of her beam was wider than the passageway. So they're just showing how big it was, that it was literally almost reaching the sky and hitting everything in its way because it was such a big ship. Okay, on to page 151. "It's impossible to wedge her through," the first mate cried. "We have to turn her back." "Hurry before she crashes on the rocks," said another. "No, don't turn her back," bellowed Stormy from the captain's wheel. "Bring all the soap on deck." The crew thought Stormy had lost his mind, but they went below and they hauled up 3-ton shipment of soap, just picked up in Holland. "Now swab her sides until she's slippery as an eel," Stormy ordered. "Aye," the sailors shouted, and they sang a chanty as they plastered the Courser's sides with white soap. "Now we'll take her through," said Stormy, and as the ship's sails caught wind, Stormalong eased her between the Dover cliffs and the Calais. Ever since then, the white cliffs of Dover have been milky white as a whale's belly, and the sea below still foams with soap spuds. For years, Stormalong was the most famous sea captain in the world. Sailors in every port told how he ate ostrich eggs for breakfast, 100 gallons of whale soup for lunch, and a wareful house of shark meat for dinner. They told how after every meal he'd pick his teeth with an 18-foot oar. Some said it was the same oar he once carried to Kansas. But it was also said that sometimes when the crew sang the chanties late at night, their giant captain would stand alone on deck, gazing out on the sea with a look of unfathomable sorrow in his eyes. After the Civil War, steamships began to transport cargo over the seas. The days of the great sailing ships came to an end, and the courageous men who steered the beautiful Yankee clippers across the oceans also began to disappear. No one remembers quite how old Stormalong died. All they recollect is his funeral. It seems that one foggy twilight, thousands of sailors attended his burial. They covered him with hundreds of yards of the finest Chinese silk, and then 50 sailors carried his huge coffin off to a grave near the sea. As they dug him into the sand with silver spades and lowered his coffin with a silver cord, they wept tears like rain. And for years afterwards they sang about him. "Old Stormy's dead and gone to rest. To my way, hey Stormalong. Of all the sailors he was the best. I, Mr. Stormalong. Ever since then, seamen first class put ABS after their names. Most people think it means able-bodied seamen, but the old New England seafaring men know different. They know it stands for the most amazing deep water sailor who ever lived, Alfred Bultock Stormalong. Okay. So on page 154, I want you to do the comprehension page. It says comprehension, dig deeper, how to analyze the text. You're going to use these pages to learn about understanding characters, point of view, and hyperbole. Then read Stormalong again to apply what you learned. So this page is about understanding characters, okay? I'm going to read where it says understanding characters. Stormalong is a tall tale about a larger-than-life sailor nicknamed Stormy. Like people in real life, every story character is unique. To figure out what a character is like, look for text evidence to find out what he or she says and does. Paying attention to what Stormy thinks and says and does will help you understand what he is like and what his relationships with other characters are like. Reread pages 146 and 147. What do Stormy's thoughts, words, and actions tell you about him? So I want you to, in your notebook, because you're not going to have enough room here, you're going to create the chart that's on page 154. You're going to write examples of Stormy's thoughts, what he was thinking to himself, words that he said to other people, other characters, and actions, things that he did. And then this will tell you more about of what kind of a person he was, okay? So that's all you need to do is come up with a couple examples of thoughts from the text that he was thinking to himself, things that he said to other people, and actions, things that he did throughout the story. Okay, thanks for watching.